Okay, so I've done my worst of the year movie list. Now let's get on to the best of. A lot of great movies in this year. Anxious to talk about them, so let's get straight on to the honourable mentions, beginning with Green Book. So a lot of people were quite surprised, and a lot of people pretty angry that Green Book won Best Picture at the Oscars. It wasn't my personal pick for the Best Picture. We'll get to that movie later on. But I really enjoyed Green Book. I thought it was a pretty simple story. I love the camaraderie between Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen. I love Viggo Mortensen. I think he's kind of underrated as an actor. But I thought they were both great in this film. Like I say, I enjoyed the chemistry. I enjoyed how they learned from each other, how they developed as they went along. As statements on racism and race relations, there's been plenty of movies that have done that a lot better. But for what it was, I just thought it was a really, really good film. I'd happily watch it again. I don't see what everyone was annoyed about, but everybody needs an excuse to be angry about something nowadays. But in terms of how much I enjoyed it, how much I liked sitting there and watching it, I thought Green Book was a really, really good film. Us. So a couple of years ago, when Jordan Peele did the movie Get Out, everybody was really surprised. You had this sketch comedian who suddenly went on to write a horror film that was not only scary, but very socially relevant. And I loved Get Out. It was one of my favourite films of that year. Us isn't quite as good. I don't think it's as clever, and I don't think it's maybe not as socially relevant. It's still a really, really good film, and I think it has a lot of great things to say. And it was pretty scary. I think it's probably scarier than Get Out. There's this like constantly sort of unsettling feeling of always being followed, of always being watched, always being pursued, and I really like that about it. Lupita Nyong'o's fantastic. She's a brilliant actress. She does really, really well in this film. Winston Duke and the other actors, they're also really, really good. There's lots of very, very clever little references. Jordan Peele's great at the multi-layering of his movies. There's lots of little hidden bits here and there. It's the kind of film where you have to go back and watch it a second time to really appreciate everything that's in it. But I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching it, and I can't wait to see what Jordan Peele is going to do next. Destroyer. So for me, Destroyer was like that movie in 2019 that nobody's seen. But I really, really enjoyed this film. It's the kind of movie that, it's much like the movie Anomalisa, which came out a few years ago. It's the kind of film where about 20 minutes into it, I realised this is the kind of movie that a lot of people are going to be put off by, but I really like it, and I did. It's a crime drama. It's a very slow-burning film. It features a fantastic central performance by Nicole Kidman, who plays this guilt-ridden cop, but she's very, very stripped back, both like physically and emotionally. You forget it's her a lot of the time, and she's trying to solve this mystery. And the movie has this very interesting structure where it gets to the end and it kind of ties right back into the beginning. I really like that. The action scenes are fantastic because they're shot in like Steadicam, and they're steadily done. There's no stupid camera shaking. There's no quick Michael Bay edits. You're allowed to see everything that happens, and the movie's so much better for it. I know, again, like I said, it's not going to be to everybody's tastes, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend that you check this film out. The Farewell. So my list last year was topped by Crazy Rich Asians, a film I absolutely loved, which gave a great window into Asian culture, and it's nice to see that with movies like The Farewell, that trend is continuing. Both movies coincidentally feature Awkwafina, but she's in the lead role this time, and she's great. The story itself it's a very, very simple story about families getting together because of an impending tragedy, but it's actually based on a true story, on this real tradition that this family followed about the grandmother of the family who was diagnosed with a terminal illness, but they decided not to tell her because they didn't want it to spoil the rest of her life. So they all just got together and spent time with her, and she's still alive apparently, the grand it's based on. But in this film, like I say, it's a very simple film that brings the family unit together. There's a lot of culture clashes, there's a lot of behavioural clashes, there's like a mixing of ideas. Awkwafina is basically caught in the middle of all of this, but she seems to have the closest connection with the grandmother. The grandmother's a great character. She's essentially just doesn't give a crap, and she just like makes fun of everybody and just tells everybody what to do. She's a really, really enjoyable character. And it's, you know, it's a very bittersweet movie because of the subject matter, and it's got a very sad ending, but a very deserved ending. This movie did get a lot of praise, and it deserves all of it, in my opinion.
Marriage Story.
I think Adam Driver is a fantastic actor. I think a lot of his work really is overshadowed by the fact that he was Kylo Ren in Star Wars, but if you watch some of his other movies, films like The Report and especially Marriage Story, he gives some fantastic performances, and he does here. This is probably his rawest and most emotionally honest performance ever captured on screen. Scarlett Johansson's also fantastic. She was apparently actually going through a divorce in the process of making this film, so she brought a lot of authenticity to the role. It's much like Kramer versus Kramer when that was happening to Dustin Hoffman back in the late 70s. It's a story of marital breakup, but it's told with a lot of humanity. It's told with a lot of heart, a lot of honesty. There's a few like obligatory confrontation scenes, but most of it is them just trying to keep things together for the benefit of their child. As a child, you know, like it feels trapped in the middle of it, and it's dealt with really, really well. There's a lot of humanity in the characters, and also in the conflicts, and I just really like the way the story progressed. The director, he's done some of the great movies like the Meyerowitz stories, was really, really good. So again, in the future, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to come up with and what these performers do later in their careers. Okay, so that's all the honourable mentions done. Now let's get into the actual best of list, beginning with
The Lego Movie 2, the second part.
So the Lego Movie, the year it came out, it was maybe my favourite movie of the year. I absolutely adored the Lego Movie. It was a real breath of fresh air. It was absolutely gorgeous to look at. It featured a great voice, a cast of voice actors. I love the story and I love the message, and it was absolutely hilarious too. The Lego Movie Part 2 is really good. I loved it. It's not as good as the first one. It doesn't have as many great moments, but I still think it was really funny. I liked how it continued the story. It didn't just try to rehash what the first movie did. It brought in new characters, it brought in new villains. Lego Batman's still there, and for me, he's always a win. But I enjoyed, again, what this movie had to say, what its message was. Different message this time. I liked the musical numbers. I liked how elaborate it was. I love the bond between Emmett and like his counterpart that's in this film. It apparently didn't do very well at the box office, which is a shame because I would actually happily see another one. But for now, Lego Movie 2 is a great sequel. It doesn't quite live up to the original, but that would have been very difficult. But it's still a lot of fun to watch.
Toy Story 4.
When I heard that they were making a Toy Story 4, I was kind of hesitant especially because of how much I love the original Toy Stories. The first two I would call masterpieces, definitely. They're absolutely legendary films, and I love them so much. The third one was great, but maybe not quite as good as the first two. This movie is really good, but I wouldn't put it anywhere near as high as the first two. I'd put it somewhere around the third one. That being said, I think it has a great story. I like how every single movie that comes along, they keep furthering the characters. I love the new characters. Sporky's great. The fact that they managed to make an existential piece of cutlery likable and relatable was great. Although it has to be said, this movie is pretty much stolen by Duke Kaboom. Keanu Reeves has emerged as, well, basically this generation's most lovable actor, and I don't know how he's never done more voice work because he's so good in this movie. He's absolutely fantastic. He's, like I say, he steals the show every time he's on screen. I just loved his character. He's just mad. So I kind of hope they do end it here though, because I don't really see any point of going on any further. This was really good. I was worried about it, but it turned out very good. But I don't think they should do any more, but for now I think it's a great quadrilogy of movies.
Knives Out.
Rian Johnson got a lot of flack when he made The Last Jedi. I think unfairly. I think Last Jedi was a really good movie. I don't know why people hated it so much. But now he's returned with Knives Out, and I'm really glad that he moved on to something like this. This is a great film. It really feels like his territory. He absolutely nails this whodunit genre down. It's got a cast of fantastic actors. Everybody's got a very unique personality. Christopher Plummer's not in it for very long, but he leaves a real impact because that's what Christopher Plummer does. I'd say the best performance is probably given by Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, who's just, like I say, he's just a wonderful actor. He's very, very eccentric, a detective who almost always has a cigar in his hand. But he's just wonderful in it, and it's great how you follow along and you gather up all the clues, and there's some really, really great twists. And it's just a fun film. It's not a downer, it's not miserable, even though it's, you know, the plot largely surrounds a death. It's a really enjoyable movie. It kept me guessing right up until the very end, and it's got some great actors doing some of the best work, so yeah, I highly recommend this film.
The Peanut Butter Falcon.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of Shia LaBeouf's public behaviour has really overshadowed his movie career, which is a shame, because I think he's a fantastic actor. I think he's, like Viggo Mortensen, I think he's very underrated. And The Peanut Butter Falcon contains some of his best and most sensitive work. It's also starring Zach Gottsagen, not sure how you say his name, a brand new actor who has Down syndrome. And this movie, what's great is this movie is a parallel of his life almost, because Zach always wanted to be an actor, and his character in this movie always wanted to be a wrestler. So it's one of those following your dream movies. It's based largely on Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, following that kind of journey through the South, and it's just a really fun movie. It's got lots of great locations, the camaraderie, especially between Zach and between Shia. It's just wonderful. Like, Shia is one of these kind of stick in the mud doer characters, and you think he's going to be like that through the whole film. He's not, and he doesn't even. A film like this almost requires him to spend a lot of the time harassing Zach's character, who's following him, but he doesn't. He actually treats him very decently, with a lot of respect, and I love that. It's really refreshing to see. There's some great cameos in it, some wrestling cameos from Jake the Snake Roberts and Mick Foley, who I love. I think they're great. And it's just a wonderful journey about following your dreams, about doing what you love. And it was very good-natured, and it's very heartwarming, so I say you should definitely see this movie.
Dolomite Is My Name.
A solid comeback movie for Eddie Murphy. Playing Rudy Ray Moore as Dolomite, it feels like when Eddie Murphy did Axel Foley, there was other actors considered for that role, but honestly, it feels like Murphy was born to play Axel Foley, and same here. It feels like he was born to play Dolomite, the profanity spewing motor-mouth comedian, and he just does it perfectly. The film is a love letter, not just to Rudy Ray Moore's life and his contribution to cinema, but to blaxploitation films in general. I love films, especially like Ed Wood and The Disaster Artist, which show bad movies being made. There's something just so wonderful about seeing bad art taking life, and that's what they do, because in this movie it's all about the making of Dolomite, the blaxploitation film, and it's clear how much they loved making the film. I mean, it didn't have a great budget, it didn't have much going for it, besides, you know, the talents and the passions of its actors, but it turned out really well, and I'm glad this movie did so well as well. I think Eddie Murphy is a great actor. He's made a lot of bad movie choices, to be fair, but here, this is exactly the kind of role he should always have been playing. Although for me, it feels like Wesley Snipes almost steals the movie. He plays this very camp, very eccentric director, and he sits there, like at one point he says action like Director Zoo, but he sits and he goes action, and it's just so out of left field, you just don't see it coming, and it's absolutely hilarious. So I love this movie. I thought it was hilarious, I thought it was very clever, and I thought it was a great love letter to blaxploitation cinema, to Rudy Ray Moore, and I hope Eddie Murphy continues along this track, and I'd love to see him do more movies just like this.
The Favourite.
So, as I mentioned earlier in this list, Green Book was not my pick for Best Picture of the Year. The Favourite was. I love The Favourite. The director, whose name I can't even begin to try to pronounce, I love his work, especially his previous film. I think it's his previous film, The Lobster. That was absolutely hilarious. I loved that film. Very overlooked movie. But The Favourite was also great. It featured award-winning Olivia Colman, who at the Oscars, if you've seen it, gave probably the most British speech ever. Definitely the most British since Eddie Redmayne. But Emma Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz are also fantastic as the two women competing for her affection. It's got a very dark, very unsettling atmosphere. It's got very unique cinematography and a very unique way it's filmed, all these strange angles. It just makes the movie just feels weird, and that's what I liked about it. It was a very different film. It had a very unique perspective. At the end of the day, it's a story about struggling for acceptance and for people to like you, and well, I really liked the film.
Joker.
If you asked me to make a list of movies I was most looking forward to seeing in 2019, Joker would have been right near the top of the list, and I'm really happy that it didn't disappoint. I loved the Joker. I loved how daring it was, how bold it was, how incendiary it was. I adored Joaquin Phoenix's performance as the Joker. There's a lot of people are already saying, well, is his Joker better than Heath Ledger's Joker? Honestly, I'm not sure it's fair to compare the two because they're very, very different. Heath Ledger's Joker was awesome. His Joker was more like a force of nature that no one could really understand. Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is essentially a man being broken down. He's a man being destroyed by society, and that's what this movie captures so beautifully. Is you see this guy who's essentially just driven insane by the people around him, by the society around him, that doesn't care about him and that just dismisses him. And it's him fighting back against that. So yes, it didn't even have to be a Joker film. It could just have been a film about a guy getting broken down, but the fact he turns into the Joker and the fact that he uses that as his way back in society, I love that. I thought it was great. It's a movie. It's pretty violent. It's pretty dark. It's pretty disturbing. But this is really what I liked about it. I liked the fact that it was willing to take risks. That it took chances, and it was dark, and it's almost a dangerous film. But like I say, that's what I enjoyed so much about it. If it played it safe, I wouldn't have liked it. But as it is, it's one of my favourite films of the year.
Good Boys.
Easily the funniest film of the year. I can't think of this movie without starting to laugh. This is the kind of film where Rachel and me watching it, we frequently had to pause the movie because it was so funny. You know, when you watch a film, you laugh so much, you have to rewind it because you missed lines of dialogue. That's what Good Boys is like. It's got a trio of great child actors. I hate when people just dismiss children can't act. They can if they're given the right material in the right direction, and they are here. It's about a trio of friends and like a journey of self-discovery at school. What's lovely about it is so many of the characters are very upbeat and they're very positive. Like there's a scene where they get confronted by bullies and you think, oh god, like bullies are among my least favourite cinematic cliches because they're just completely one-dimensional characters who are there just to annoy the protagonists. But even the bullies in this movie are funny. Even they're weird and off the wall. And it was great. I was like, oh, it's such a relief. Why do you have to have bullies be dicks all the time? Why can't you have them be funny? And they are in this movie. And the screenplay is excellent. There's so many funny lines. One of the main characters, Lucas, he gets, I think, probably the best lines in the story. There's a scene where the boys have to learn how to kiss. So young adult logic, they look at porn, and there's a scene where they're looking at this porn video, and it's like the sexy stepmother confronts her stepson, and Lucas goes, "Oh, he's in trouble." Or there's another one where they all meet up at a party later on. They've been separated for a while. They come and they meet up at a party, and Lucas sees his two friends and he goes, "Well, look who's here, me." The film is just full of great lines like that. I don't want to go through all of them. It would take too much time, but I laughed so much at Good Boys, and I was really, really charmed by it as well. It's a lovely, lovely movie. It's very charming. It's very sweet-natured, and I just absolutely adored it.
Rocket Man.
So the movie Rocket Man succeeded by being basically everything that the movie Bohemian Rhapsody should have been. I liked Bohemian Rhapsody. I adore the band Queen. They're probably my favourite band of all time. Bohemian Rhapsody was safe. It played everything way too safe. It felt like it sugarcoated a lot of things. Rocket Man doesn't do that. Rocket Man shows Elton John's struggles. It shows his struggles with drink. It shows his struggles with drugs. It shows his struggles with his personal life. It shows his struggles to accept his homosexuality. The movie shows all of that. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. It doesn't try to brush over it. The reason this movie took so long to get produced is because Elton John always wanted a movie made about his life. He always wanted this film to be made. But studios constantly said, we want a PG-13 movie, and he told them all the same thing. He said, I've not led a PG-13 life. Neither had Freddie Mercury, but like I said, Bohemian Rhapsody completely watered his story down, but Rocketman doesn't. It takes risks, it's ballsy, and I love the movie for it. It's got fantastic musical numbers. I love Elton John's music, of course. So the musical number is great. Taron Egerton is brilliant in the lead role. I really hope he's in for some serious awards contention. I think he's just fantastic. He does all of his own singing, which really adds authenticity to it, so he's not just lip-syncing the whole time. The movie looks great. It's brilliantly paced. When it got to the very end, when the credits started, I was like, oh, that's the end of the film, because I wanted it to keep going. I was having so much fun watching it. And I've watched it, bits of it again several times. So Rocketman is one of my favourite musical biopics anyway, because it took risks, because it dared to show things that maybe some others didn't, and because it's just so much fun. I mean, at the end of the day, the movie really is an upper, because it's a story of survival, how Elton John managed to make it through all of that, and he's still here today. So Rocketman is a movie that I think everybody should see. Even if you're not a fan of Elton John, I still think you'll get a lot out of it.
And number 1, Avengers Endgame.
Well, when I did the list in 2018, Infinity War just missed out on the list, but Endgame makes it to the top of this one. Wow, this was, like I said about Infinity War, this was one of those cinematic events. It's the culmination of all of these stories that have been building up over time, all these different strings of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think it's all brought together really well. I was hesitant at first when they were talking about, because after the click, when half the population of the universe has died, I was like, well, how are they gonna work around that? I was kind of disheartened when I heard they were going to use a time travel storyline, because I'm like, well, if you just go back in time, it just kind of erases the point of the last film. But I think they worked with it really well, like going around to find all the Infinity Stones and battling Thanos again. And that final battle was incredible. I mean, yes, a lot of it was just the Avengers fighting a whole bunch of faceless monsters, but it's still unbelievably huge, especially when you see it on the big screen. Like, my favourite part of the whole film, I think, was when the battle starts and you have Alan Silvestri's score playing and all the players arrive on the battlefield. It's just the way it announces the final battle is just spectacular. I absolutely loved it. The characters are still all really, really likeable. There's a lot of great comedy, especially with Thor looking like the Big Lebowski. There's a lot of great jokes in that. It's good to see all these characters back, and it's the swan song for Robert Downey Jr. and for Chris Evans as well, maybe some others, but they ended on a real high note. The ending wasn't quite as devastating as Infinity War, but I think we didn't really know what we were getting into back then. So I don't know where the MCU is going to go from here, but I'm looking forward to where it goes now. There's some standalone films coming in 2020, so I look forward to seeing those. So yeah, Endgame, best movie of the year. No movie was this high stakes, no movie was this impactful, and no movie left me wandering out the cinema thinking, wow, just as much as this film did. So, thank you for watching my best and worst of 2019 list. A little disclaimer here to say I'm not going to be doing this next year. I'm not going to be doing a best and worst of 2020 film. I'll still be watching a lot of films this year, but over the last few years I've done a list every single year, and I feel like a lot of time it kind of forces me to watch a lot of bad films, because I think, well, I can watch good films, but I need to do a worst of list, so I need to watch bad films. So sometimes I feel like I'm watching bad films just out of obligation, and this is coming from a guy who has spent various periods of my life. I've actively sought out and watched bad films. I'll type into Google worst films of all time, most disturbing films of all time. So I've seen a lot of really awful films. So most of the ones I see on my year of lists don't even compare to some of the crap I've watched. But I'm taking a break for this year. I'm trying to watch a lot of other movies. I'm trying to see Best Picture winners and just films from various years. So I'm trying not to force myself to watch as many movies as I can from this year. I'm trying to watch a bit of a variety of them. Maybe I'll come back to these lists in the future. I'm not really sure right now, but I hope you enjoyed my list, guys, and I hope you enjoy 2020. So take care.